So, what is China's energy endgame? I mean, it's a massive question, right? And the answer could shake up everything, from what you pay for gas to, honestly, the entire global economy. There's no single easy answer, but there is a framework for figuring out what might happen next. So let's dive in and break down the 5 most likely ways this whole thing could play out.
And this isn't just some random speculation. This comes from a deep, deep dive. We're talking 49 videos exploring every single angle of this crisis. And all that research gives us a solid framework, a real way to understand the potential futures we are all staring down.
Okay, so let's get right to it. The big question. How does China's energy crisis actually end? You know, the flashpoint for all of this is the Strait of Hormuz. Think of it like a critical artery for the world's oil supply, and the conflict in Iran is putting that artery in serious jeopardy. As you're about to see, the outcome isn't just one single path. It's 5 very different possibilities.
And here they are all laid out for us. This is basically our roadmap to the future. Now you can see right away that the biggest slice of the pie, sitting at a hefty 35 to 40%, is something called prolonged disruption. But we've also got everything from a nice, neat, quick resolution all the way down to a pretty terrifying, the less likely, escalation. Let's actually dig into what each of these would feel like.
All right, let's start by looking at two sides of the same coin. We're going to compare the best case scenario with the one that's, well, most likely to happen. This is the quick fix versus the slow burn.
And you can really see the difference here. On one side, you've got the rosy quick resolution scenario. The Strait of Hormuz reopens, oil prices chill out, and the world economy kind of breathes a sigh of relief. But, and this is a big but, its probability is pretty low, only about 15 to 20%. Now look at the other side, prolonged disruption. The probability more than doubles, oil prices could go through the roof, and China's economy, which is a huge engine for the rest of us, starts to sputter.
So you might be asking, why is that optimistic scenario so unlikely? Well, it all boils down to an internal power struggle inside Iran. Just imagine this. You've got the diplomats in suits shaking hands and making a deal, while the really powerful military group, the IRGC, is on the ground basically saying, nope, not happening. It's like the right hand has no idea what the left hand is doing, or maybe it just doesn't care. And that makes any quick, stable agreement incredibly hard to count on.
Which brings us right back to that most likely outcome, the prolonged disruption. And this quote just nails why it's so dangerous. It's not some sudden, dramatic event. It's more like a chronic illness for the economy. China can manage the day-to-day symptoms, tap into its emergency reserves, burn a little more coal, but the underlying damage just keeps getting worse and worse over time.
So if that slow burn is the most likely reality, what are China's big strategic moves? It really comes down to 2 major choices. Find a way to pay the toll or make a massive pivot away from the problem entirely.
So this is the pay the toll option. In this scenario, Iran pretty much turns the Strait of Hormuz into the world's most expensive toll booth. We're talking over $1 million just for one tanker to pass through. For a country like China, that's a huge bill. But hey, at least the oil keeps flowing. The real danger, though, the precedent this sets. If this works for Iran here, what's to stop another country from trying the exact same thing at another vital shipping lane?
Okay, so if paying the toll is just too risky or too expensive, China could go for option B, the pivot. This is scenario 4, and it means a permanent, total restructuring of their entire energy system. And we're not talking about small tweaks here. This is a monumental shift. We're talking a massive surge in building new nuclear plants, doubling pipeline capacity with partners like Russia, and beefing up their strategic oil reserves to last them for years. It is a full-on push for energy independence. And here is the endgame of that pivot. The goal isn't just to get through the current crisis. It's to fundamentally remake their entire energy map, to slash their reliance on that vulnerable sea-based energy to less than half of what it is today, all within a decade. That is how a short-term crisis can trigger a permanent, world-changing shift.
All right, so we've covered the most probable paths and the huge strategic choices China has to make. Now let's look at the terrifying wildcard scenario, and then we'll pull it all together for the final verdict on how this is most likely to end.
Scenario 5 is escalation. Now, thankfully, it's the least likely, but the impact would be absolutely catastrophic. We're talking about other critical shipping lanes closing down, a direct military confrontation between the US and China, and the whole thing spiraling from an energy crisis into a full-blown economic war. A true global nightmare scenario.
So after all that, where do we land? Well, the most likely future isn't actually just one of these scenarios. It's a combination of 2 of them. It starts with that slow burn from scenario 2, that long, grinding disruption.
That constant economic pain then acts as the trigger, forcing China into Scenario 4, that massive, permanent pivot toward energy self-sufficiency. The crisis, in effect, becomes the catalyst for a total transformation.
And this is the long-term result. The China that comes out the other side of this crisis is a fundamentally different country. It's a nation that is way less vulnerable to naval choke points, a nation powered more by its own domestic energy and overland pipelines. And because of that, it becomes much more strategically aligned with its key energy suppliers, like Russia and Iran.
And that brings us to maybe the single most important takeaway of this entire thing. This isn't just about the end of one crisis. It's really about the beginning of something completely new. We could be witnessing the birth of an entirely new global energy order.
So there you have it. That's the framework for how this whole thing could play out. We've talked about the quick fix, the slow burn, the strategic pivot, and that scary wild card. So now I want to turn it over to you. What do you think is the most likely path forward? Do you agree that this prolonged disruption is going to force a bigger change? Let me know what you think.